All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to be going over the second half of Article 1 of the Constitution, which is again about Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. But today, we're going to look at exactly what can and can't they do and what little perks they get. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the warm up picture. All right, so here it is. All right. The first question asks you to analyze the picture and basically tell me what's going on here. All right. Now, the second question says, what do you think this artist is trying to say about Republicans and Democrats in Congress? Okay. So, using your analysis of this picture, um, what do you think this artist is trying to say? Okay. So, go ahead, pause the video, write your response for number one and number two. Okay. Because we're moving on in three, two, one. So, Section 5 of the Constitution basically says in cases where there is some type of confusion in the elections, the House and the Senate decides. Now, when they're talking about these elections, they're talking about like the president and things like that. Okay, they're not talking about like, um, you know, a mayor in some town in some state. No, that's a different issue. They're talking basically like the presidency. They deal with that. Okay. And if you're ever thinking, well, has that ever happened? Yeah, it has happened in the year 2000 election between Bush Jr. and Gore. That one was a pretty interesting example where votes in like Florida were not counted and things like that. Some people said no, you have the only way a vote can count is to punch a hole all the way through the little ticket, and some of these holes didn't have actually holes; it was just a little divot and thing. So there was a whole mess with that, and the House and the Senate had to basically take action. Okay. Now, for a meeting to take place in either house, the Senate or the House of Representatives, there has to be at least half the people there. Okay, so if there's only like a quarter of the people there, it's not official. It's not an official meeting. There has to be at least half. Okay. Now, this thing I thought was pretty interesting. It says if they want to kick someone out of Congress, things like that, you know, they have to have a two-thirds majority. So if there's some senator, some member of the House of Representatives who's just being a pain in the butt, who's just, I mean, outlandish and just makes things difficult for everyone and so on such and such stuff, they can kick that person out by two-thirds majority. Okay. Now, Section 6 says their salary are set by law. Okay. But because of the 27th Amendment, let's say Congress says we deserve a raise. So they raise the price, their salaries will say from, I'm just throwing it out there, let's say $200,000, they raise it up to 400,000. So they double it. Thing is, they cannot get that money. They don't get that raise until they've been reelected. So people who are in the House of Representatives, because remember, their elections every 2 years, they will get to that money quicker than somebody in the Senate. Yeah, remember those guys are their terms are 6 years. So if someone just started their new term and then they say, okay, let's raise our salaries, those guys have to wait like 5-6 years to get that pay raise, and then they actually have to be reelected to get that money. If they don't, let's say they go for reelection, they lose. That next person coming in, they will get that pay raise, but not that other person. Okay. The other thing is, anything said in Congress can't be used against them in court. Okay, so let's say a congressman, let's say they're trying to talk about like legalizing marijuana. Let's just use that as an example. And some congressman from a state like Colorado, California, or Washington, where marijuana is legal, the congressman might say, "Hey, I smoke every day," things like that. Well, if the Washington D.C. police heard this, you know, and they're like, oh, we're going to arrest him, this and that, and we're going to use what he said as evidence, like he confessed. They can't do that because whatever said in Congress can't be used against them in court. You know, they said that in court and to the public record, not to under oath. You know, so yeah. The other thing is they can't be arrested for minor crimes. You know, if they're going to a meeting or if there's a vote happening and they need to get there to do their vote. So let's say they're having a vote and a congressman starts getting their car and they're driving, they're passing through red lights and red lights, driving past stop signs, things like that. Um, they can get away with that because that's a minor crime. Now, let's say they get in an accident and they kill somebody, then that's something different, you know. But if they're just running red lights and nobody's getting hurt, you know, they're running past stop signs, you know, and not hitting anybody, not causing an accident, then yeah, they can get away with that. Okay. But again, if someone dies because of their actions or they are involved in someone's death, things like that, then no, they're not protected. Only minor crimes. And the other thing about congressmen in both the House Representative and the Senate, they can't have any other type of government jobs. Okay, they can't be if they're a senator, they can't be a mayor, they can't be a governor, they can't be an assemblyman. You know, they can't be a teacher, fireman, cop, because those are all government jobs. You know, if they want to be a ice cream man who drives around the trucks, okay, you can do that because that's not a government job. You know, they want to sell shoes, they could do that because again, that's not a government job. But any job where you get paid by the government, they can't do that. They can't have that job. Okay. All right. So in the last video, we were talking about how the senators and the House of Representative members, they really only have to meet one time a year. You know, and that's legally the only time the many times they have to be at a meeting. Only one per year. You know, so which of the two perks do you feel is better? Which one do you think is best? Having to only go to one meeting a year or getting away with minor crimes when there's a meeting or a vote? And why did you choose that one? So there's a writing prompt on the bottom. I think the biggest perk is write that one down because and explain why. Okay, so think about it. Which one do you really truly feel is best? Pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's the interesting thing in section 7. Basically, the House of Representatives is the only place where they can tax bills or tax bills can be passed. The reason why they did this because again, remember the House of Representatives, they get reelected every 2 years. So if they feel like, hey, we should raise a tax on all the middle class people, let's not tax the rich people, you know. If the average Joe says, you know what, no, I don't like that, my taxes went up and you voted for that, they only have to, you know, have those representatives for 1 or 2 years max, and then they can get rid of them. They can vote them out. Okay, that's why a lot of these senator or House of Representative members are kind of on the tax issue. How much should we tax citizens? You know, should we put a new tax code in there, loophole? You know, fill up a loophole for the rich people or middle class. You know, they don't want to upset the people who vote for them because again, they want their cushy jobs. Now, when it comes to the veto, or I should say a bill, both houses must pass the bill before it's sent to the president. Now, the House representative gets the bill, the Senate gets the bill. They have to both say yes. If no changes are made from either one of them and they get the okay with a simple majority, which is 51%, if a bill gets 51% on both sides, then it goes to the White House. They sit it on the president's table, and he has 10 days to sign it. If he doesn't sign it in 10 days, it becomes law. All right. The president can sign it and it becomes law, but the other option they have is to throw a veto, which basically say, I don't like it. And if you don't know what a veto is, you don't understand it, go back to the executive branch videos, which were last week and the week before, and watch that video about that. Now, just because the president throws a veto and the bill goes back to the House of Representatives and the Senate, doesn't mean that's it. Okay? Both houses need a 2/3 majority. If they change even one word, technically that bill is a new bill because they changed it. But if they keep it the same and it passes 2/3 majority, then it becomes law. The president cannot veto it again. Okay? But they cannot change even a single word, or else that's a new bill and the president gets another veto. Okay? And that goes for both houses. They can't, either one of them, change one word if it's sent back to them. Okay. Section 8. Congress has the power to, so we're going to look at the powers they have. Under the Constitution, they can establish and maintain an army and navy, meaning they pay for it and things like that. They can create a new branch, but they are not in control of it. That is the president. The president is the commander in chief. So they basically pay the bill. They're the ones who create it and maintain it, but they're not in control of it. That's the president. The next thing is they create post offices and courthouses, both federal courthouses and state courthouses. So I've heard some people say, oh man, like Fresno, oh man, it's always crowded. How come they don't just have another courthouse here? Why doesn't the city build one? Because again, the city doesn't build it. It's the Congress. They do. So your representative in your county, if your county, your city needs another courthouse, you need to tell them, hey, look, it's always busy, it's packed, and we need another courthouse here. Then they would go to Congress and propose, like, hey, look at this, what's happening in my area, my district. We need another courthouse. And then they would vote on it. Okay. The next thing, regulate commerce between states. So the deals going on between states, they handle that type of stuff. They can declare war. Okay. And they can raise money. Now, the president technically can declare war for 90 days. But the thing is, in that 90 days, that president has to pay for that stuff. The executive branch has to pay for the fuel for the planes and tanks and whatever they're using, for the soldiers and stuff like that. They got to pay for all that stuff. And they only have 90 days to do whatever they're going to do. But if the president asks Congress to declare war and Congress says okay, then they can be at war forever as long as they want to. The Congress basically pays the bills. They raise money to pay for the war and stuff like that. So, yeah. The other thing is that Congress can run a debt. They're the only ones who could say, yes, we, the United States, we will be in a debt, so we need to borrow money from another, country, a bank, things like that. They are the ones who can do that, not the president, not individual senators. No, Congress does that. Okay. The last thing is they can pass any laws necessary for them to carry out all the previous powers. So just for example, let's say for the debt, let's say they put a cap on it for $100 trillion. If Congress is like, you know what, we need to raise that debt ceiling higher, we need to be able to borrow more money, they can create a law saying the cap is now, instead of $100 trillion, it's $500 trillion. They can do that because, again, it's within that last bit. They can have any laws, create any laws that gives them the power to do their job. Okay. So here is your next question. Of all the powers that Congress has, those ones that we talked about just now, which one do you feel is the most important and why? So if you didn't get it down or you can't read your own handwriting, just go back on the video a little bit and look at those 6 powers and basically decide which one do you personally feel is the most important one and why. Okay, so pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, section 9. Now it says here they are limited on their ability to regulate the slave trade because back in the day, the slave issue was huge. It was the elephant in the room. Okay, and yes, they did have the ability to regulate the slave trade, but not completely because again, that's more of a states' rights issue. You know, but they also could basically say, hey, you can't be pumping in a bunch of slaves. So because remember, back then, if you watched the last video or you were in class last time, the 3/5 clause basically said for every 5 slaves equals 3 people. So they're telling them, hey, you can't just be bringing in so that your population power goes higher. No, no, no. That's abusing it. So mm-mm. So there was a little thing with that. The other thing they can't do is suspend the right of habeas corpus. Now, I know I've had a lot of students over the past, good God, 10 years or even longer who go, I keep hearing that word. I don't know what it means. I hear it in movies, TV shows, things like that. I heard other people talk about it. What does that mean? Okay, habeas corpus. In red, that's the textbook definition of it. A right requiring a person under arrest to be brought before a judge or into court, especially to secure the person's release unless lawful grounds are shown for their detention. So if you've ever watched a TV show or a movie that deals with the courthouse, type of thing, when they bring the defendant, the person accused of the crime, they'll stand before the judge and they'll say, "Okay, how do you plea?" And they say guilty or not guilty, right? And then they ask the judge asks the prosecution, uh, "What's your thing about bail?" And they say, "Hey, this person killed 40 people. We feel they're a danger to society. We request that bail be denied." Something like that. When somebody kills 40 some people, things like that, yeah, the judge is gonna say, "Yeah, you are a danger to society, so no." That's what you're being charged with, so no. But if it's something like this person was arrested for being intoxicated. They just were too drunk or things like that. The judge might be like, does this happen quite a bit? No, it was like their first time, first or second time. The judge might be like, okay, well, you can get on bail for 10,000. You know, that's what it is. Your bail. So you don't have to spend the whole time between when you got arrested and your trial starts. You don't have to be in jail for that. Because back in the day, that's what they used to do. Keep people in jail until their trial. And who knows when their trial was going to be. So that's why they give that. That's what it means, habeas corpus. Okay. The next part, if you look below, says they can't pass bills of attainder laws, which is laws specifically passed to punish individuals. So they can't pass laws saying people with brown hair in this country have a curfew at 7 p.m. They can't do that. They can't blame you just because of your how you look, your ethnicity, your skin color, things like that. They can't do that. Okay. The other one, this is the one that's a lot of students get kind of like they don't understand it. So I'm going to break it down for you. This says they can't pass ex post facto laws. These are basically you can't be charged with a crime if it wasn't a crime at the time. Okay. So, for example, let's say today, you hear in the news that let's say if you have a pound of marijuana, Let's just say that. Okay, uh, you could have a pound of marijuana now, but in 2 months, if you have a pound of marijuana, it's going to be illegal because there's a new law that was created and got passed and things like that. So you can have it now, but in a month, that law is going to take into effect. So if a cop comes to you today and says, "Hey, you got a pound of marijuana, I'm arresting you because you can't have it." No, because right now it's not a crime. In the future, in a month from now, yeah, it's going to be a crime, you know. But right now, it's still legal until we hit that mark that day where it becomes illegal. Then after that time, yeah, if I have the same pound of weed, then yeah, you can arrest me. But till it's illegal, till it's that time, they can't. And the thing is, where a lot of students get like kind of confused is they say, well, like speaking of weed, um, now it's legal. I have an uncle. I know somebody who's in jail, for drug possession, for marijuana. How come they're not released out of jail? Because when they got arrested, when they got charged, it was still illegal. So just because it's legal now doesn't mean that they're forgiven of their crimes. No, they committed the crime. They knew it was illegal. They still did what they did with it. And they were proven guilty. That's why they're there. And that's why now that it is legal, that's why they're not out. Because they knew purposely went against the law at that time, not now. Okay. So hopefully that clears some of that up. If you have any questions, please come talk to me. Okay. If there's part of that you didn't understand, talk to me and I'll see if I can help you out and understand it more. The next thing, no direct taxes unless those taxes are proportional to the population of the state. So they can't say every state we're gonna tax you $5 million. Well, here in California, if you take all the people to pay off $5 million in taxes, our state could knock that off in a heartbeat. Because look how many people live in California. Look how many people we have here are millionaires, billionaires. You know, we could easily pay that off in a heartbeat. But a state like Montana, Alaska, Rhode Island, these places have very few people. So for that state to collect $5 million in taxes from their people, it's going to be hard because they don't have many millionaires. They don't have a lot of people um, to collect taxes from. So, okay. The other thing is they can't pass laws that favor one part of the country over another. So they can't say, oh, on the East Coast, the speed limits on the highway are 85 miles an hour, but on the West Coast, your guys' speed limit is 55. They can't do that. You can't say over here it's okay, and over here, not okay. You know what I mean? Um, they can't spend money unless there's a law that spends that money. So in other words, the Congress can't say, "Hey, we made a profit this year. We made more money than we spent, so we have a surplus of money. Let's all go to Cancun." They can't do that. Okay, Congress can't just take money and buy themselves gifts and things like that. All the money that's collected from taxes and stuff like that from the government, they spend it on programs and things like that there has to be a law saying we pass this bill that we need $300 million from the taxes we collected to rebuild roads, bridges, to pay for elderly care, whatever it may be. Okay, so the Congress cannot just spend money on themselves using taxpayers' money. Okay. The other thing that Congress cannot do is take nobility or cannot make nobility, meaning they can't be knighted, if they're a congressman. This is during the time when they're congressmen, so that afterwards, that's something else. But while they're in Congress and some of that, they cannot be knighted and they can't be acknowledged by foreign countries saying like, hey, you are our chief such and such. No. Why? You're a congressman. You should not be acknowledged basically by another country. So, okay. Oh, and I forgot one thing. A student asked me, well, what if like a senator was a soldier during war, and another country gave him a medal? Well, a medal is something else, but they're not being knighted. You know, you just don't get knighted just because you smiled at the queen. No, you have to earn it. You have to achieve it by doing something great for that country, not for our own. You know, so that's the reason why they can't have that. All right, so Section 10 says states cannot make their own money. Back in the day, states made their own money, and it was stupid because if you cross the state line, you had, let's say, New York money, you couldn't go to Pennsylvania and spend that New York money. So imagine if United States, each state had their own dollar, you know, and you traveled around, you know, Kansas is not going to accept the California dollar and things like that. So it just makes things worse. Things a lot worse and bad. Okay, so states cannot make their own money. States cannot declare war, or they can't do anything else that Congress can do. Okay, they can't because everything Congress does is for the nation. You know, states don't have the right to make a decision for the nation. Also, states can't tax stuff from other states. Okay, they can't tax stuff from other states. California can't be like, oh, that's from our state, from Texas. You Texas, you guys gotta tax them for us. No, they can't. No, they can't do that. The other thing states can't do is declare war, be in treaty discussion, or form alliances with other states or countries. Okay, they cannot do that. All right, and they can't import or export taxes on goods. Okay. So, yeah, all that stuff, that's what Congress can do, not them. So, here's your exit ticket question. Would you want to be a member of the Senate or the House of Representatives? If so, which house and why? If not, tell me why. Why wouldn't you want to be a senator or a member of the House of Representatives? So, the writing props on the bottom, I would want to be a member of Senate and House of Representatives because, or if you say you don't want to, I wouldn't want to be a member of either house because, and explain. Okay. So, once you're done with this exit ticket, you are done with this lesson. So, hopefully, you learned something new. Hopefully, you truly enjoyed this. You guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.